Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku was assigned to evacuation duty. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The silence in the prep room was heavy enough to choke on. It wasn't a natural silence, not the quiet of a library or the hush of a sleeping dorm. It was the suffocating, static-filled air that precedes a lightning strike. Izuku Midoriya sat on a reinforced metal bench, his gloved hands clasped tightly between his knees. The Air Force gauntlets, usually a comforting weight that signaled he was ready to protect, felt like lead anchors today. He stared at the scuffed floor tiles of the Gunga Mountain Villa's staging area, or rather, the secondary remote site they had been bussed to hours before dawn, and tried to force his breathing into a steady rhythm. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. It didn't work. The anxiety was a living thing, coiling in his gut, buzzing at the base of his skull. It wasn't just the nerves of a mission. They had done work studies. They had fought the Yakuza. They had faced villains before. But this was war. Midoriya. Izuku's head snapped up. Shoto Todoroki stood over him, adjusting the temperature regulation gauge on his costume. The dual-haired boy looked calm, but Izuku had learned to read the micro-expressions on his friend's face. Shoto's eyes were tight at the corners. You're vibrating, Shoto said quietly. I am? Izuku looked down at his legs. They were bouncing rhythmically, a nervous tick he hadn't even noticed. He forced them still. Sorry. Just thinking. About the briefing? Izuku nodded, his throat dry. Yeah. About the briefing. 12 hours earlier, the conference room at UA High had been packed beyond capacity. It was a gathering of the heavy hitters, the kind of assembly that would make a villain's blood run cold, or a civilian feel infinitely safe. Endeavor sat at the head, arms crossed, radiating heat and authority. Hawks was perched casually on the back of a chair, though his eyes were sharp and unblinking. Eraserhead stood by the whiteboard, his capture weapon loose around his neck, looking more tired than Izuku had ever seen him. Class 1A and 1B were squeezed into the back rows, a sea of colorful costumes and apprehensive faces. They had been told this was the final strategy meeting. The climax of months of investigation. The target is the Jaku General Hospital, a representative from the Public Safety Commission announced, pointing a laser at the projected map. Dr. Kudaigaraki, the chairman, has been identified as the primary engineer behind the NOMA. We believe Tamura Shigaraki is currently at this location, undergoing a procedure to enhance his abilities. A murmur rippled through the students. Enhancing his abilities? Shigaraki was already a nightmare. We strike at dawn, Endeavor's voice cut through the whispers like a blade. We will be dividing into 3 primary units. The hospital raid team, the villa raid team, and the rear guard and evacuation support. Izuku leaned forward, his notebook already out, pen hovering. He had been training for this. He had unlocked Black Whip. He could handle 45% of one for all on impact now. He was ready to be on the line. He needed to be on the line. Shigaraki was his responsibility. The vestiges had made that clear. Team assignments are as follows, Eraserhead said, his dry voice projecting clearly. The screen flickered, displaying lists of names. Izuku's eyes scanned the hospital raid team instantly. Endeavor. Mirko. Eraserhead. Gran Torino. He scanned the students assigned there. Bakugo Katsuki. Todoroki Shoto. Izuku's heart skipped a beat. He looked for his name next to Kaken's. It wasn't there. He blinked, confusion clouding his vision. Had they put him with the Villa team? To fight the Liberation Army directly? He scanned the second list. Ed Shot. Midnight. Empty Lady. Yayoro Zumomo. Tokoyami Fumikage. Kirishima Aijiro. His name wasn't there either. A cold pit opened in his stomach. He looked at the final list. The smallest text at the bottom right of the screen. Jaku City Sector 4 Rear Guard / Evacuation Support. Led Bernin. Ida Tenya. Uraraka Ochako. Ajiri Tsuyu. Midoriya Izuku. The pen snapped in Izuku's hand. The sound was sharp, echoing slightly in the quiet room. Several heads turned toward him, but Izuku was staring at Aizawa, his eyes wide with disbelief. Sensei, Izuku said. He hadn't meant to speak, but the word fell out of his mouth. Aizawa didn't look surprised. He looked resigned. Problem, Midoriya? I think there's a mistake on the roster, Izuku said, standing up. His legs felt shaky. I'm assigned to evacuation? In the city? There is no mistake, Aizawa stated flatly. But Izuku looked around the room. He saw Kaken staring at him, face unreadable. He saw All Might standing in the corner, looking down at his skeletal hands. Shigaraki is at the hospital. If he wakes up, if he fights, I need to be there. That is exactly why you are not going to be there, Endeavor rumbled. The number one hero stood up, his presence dominating the room. We are aware of the connection between you and the villain. We know he targets you. That's why I have to fight. Izuku argued, his voice rising in pitch. If he wants one for all, I can draw him out. I can. You can get killed, Aizawa cut in, his voice sharp. Or worse. You can get your quirk stolen. The room went dead silent. The secret of one for all was known to a select few, but the way Aizawa phrased it, get your quirk stolen, was vague enough for the class to interpret it as a general danger, yet specific enough for Izuku to feel the weight of the truth crushing him. Midoriya, Aizawa continued, walking over to stand directly in front of his student. Listen to me closely. This operation hinges on surprise. We are hitting the hospital to apprehend Shigaraki before he wakes up. If we succeed, there is no fight. If we fail, and he wakes up, Aizawa's dark eyes narrowed. He will be looking for you. If you are at ground zero, you are serving yourself up on a silver platter. You are the bait that we cannot afford to lose. I'm not bait, Izuku protested, his hands balling into fists. I'm a hero. I've trained just as hard as Todoroki and Kaken. I can fight at their level. It's not about capability, Deku, the voice came from the side. Bakugo remained seated, his arms crossed, his red eyes fixed on the back of the chair in front of him. It's about liability. Izuku recoiled as if slapped. Kaken? Bakugo turned his head, his expression lacking its usual explosive fury. Instead, it was grim. Serious. If that hand freak wakes up and sees you, he's gonna go berserk. The pros have to focus on taking him down, not babysitting you because you decided to walk into the crosshairs. If he touches you, it's game over. For everyone. But I can defend myself. Can you defend everyone else while he's tearing through them to get to you? Bakugo challenged. You're a magnet, nerd. The strategy is to keep the magnet away from the metal until the metal is scrapped. Izuku looked to All Might for support. The former symbol of peace looked up, his blue eyes sorrowful. Young Midoriya, All Might rasped. Please. Trust the plan. The Safety Commission, and we agreed. If Shigaraki obtains one for all, the war is lost instantly. The risk is too great. Your duty today is to survive. That is the mission. Izuku stood there, surrounded by his peers, feeling smaller than he had in years. To survive. That was it? While his friends fought the greatest threat the world had ever seen, he was supposed to hide in the city and direct traffic? We need analytical minds in the evacuation zone, Aizawa added, his tone softening slightly, though his gaze remained firm. Jaka City has a population of over 100,000. If the fight spills out of the hospital, those people need to move, and they need to move fast. I need someone who can think on their feet, who can organize chaos, and who has the speed to act if things go wrong. That is not a benchwarmer position, Midoriya. It is the shield that protects the innocent. It was a good speech. Logical. Sound. But as Izuku sat back down, watching his name glow on the screen under rear guard, he didn't feel like a shield. He felt like a coward. Present-time Jaka's city outskirts. The memory of the briefing faded as the transport truck hit a bump. Izuku jolted back to the present. You okay, Deku? Uraraka was sitting across from him. Her round face was framed by her pink helmet, her expression filled with concern. Next to her, Ida was polishing his glasses with a fervor that suggested he was just as nervous as everyone else. I'm fine, Izuku lied. He tapped the side of his mask. Just going over the evacuation protocols in my head. It is frustrating, Ida said, placing his glasses back on his face. To be so close to the action yet separated from it. But Aizawa-sensei is correct. The rear guard is the backbone of Heroes Society. My brother always said that those who guide the citizens to safety are the true heroes of any disaster. Yeah! Vernon, the sidekick from Endeavor's agency, shouted from the front of the truck. Her flaming hair illuminated the dark cabin. Don't look so gloomy, kids. You're with me. We're gonna clear the city so fast the villains won't even know there were people here. Plus, think of it this way. If everything goes right, the guys at the hospital won't even throw a punch. We're the ones doing the real work today. She was trying to boost morale, but her high energy only made Izuku's stomach churn more. If everything goes right. Izuku looked out the small reinforced window. The sun was just starting to crest over the horizon, casting long, pale shadows across the countryside. They were approaching Jaka City. It looked like any other modern city. Tall glass buildings, winding overpasses, sleepy residential districts. Somewhere, a few miles away in the mountains, Endeavor and Eraserhead were creeping toward a hospital morgue. One for all is humming, Izuku realized. He closed his eyes, focusing on the sensation. Usually, the vestiges were quiet unless he sought them out. But today, there was a low-level static in the back of his mind. It wasn't the danger sense, that sharp stab of pain that warned of immediate malice. This was different. It was anticipation. It was fear. Is it the first? Izuku wondered. Is he sensing his brother? We're arriving at the rendezvous point, the driver announced. The truck slowed to a halt. The back doors hissed open, revealing the cool morning air and the concrete expanse of a municipal parking lot. Jaka City was waking up. All right, listen up. Vernon hopped out, her flames flaring brighter. We are Sector 4. That's the residential district bordering the foothills. Our cover story, if anyone asks before the alarm is tripped, is a gas leak potential. Once the signal comes from Endeavor, we switch to full emergency evac. We clear the streets, we clear the houses, and we move everyone to the designated shelters in the south. Izuku stepped out of the truck, his iron saws clanking against the pavement. He took a deep breath. The city smelled of exhaust and morning dew. It smelled normal. Midoriya, you're with Uraraka and Ida, Vernon commanded. Take the main avenue. Use your speed to scout ahead. Ida, you handle transport coordination. Uraraka, you help with any debris or heavy lifting if we need to clear roadblocks. Midoriya. She paused, looking him up and down. You're the lookout. Keep your eyes peeled. If anything leaks from the hospital, Noma, villains, shockwaves, you call it in. Understood, the three students chorused. They moved out. The streets were sparsely populated. Early risers walking dogs, delivery trucks making rounds. It was the most surreal feeling Izuku had ever experienced as a hero. He was walking through a ghost town that didn't know it was dead yet. Excuse me. Ida waved his arm stiffly at an old man sweeping his porch. Sir. We are conducting a safety sweep of the area. Could you please prepare to vacate the premises? The old man blinked. Vacate? Is there a fire? A precautionary measure. Ida boomed. Izuku tuned them out, his eyes scanning the horizon. The hospital was situated in the mountains, visible only as a small speck against the greenery. It feels wrong, doesn't it? Uraraka murmured, stepping up beside him. Izuku didn't look at her. He kept his eyes on the mountain. What does, being here? I know what they said about safety. And I know I shouldn't want to be in danger. But, she clenched her fists. After everything with Sir Naitai and Overhaul, I feel like we should be fighting. I feel like you want to be fighting. I don't want to fight for the sake of fighting, Uraraka, Izuku said softly. But I have this feeling. He tapped his chest. Shigaraki isn't just a villain anymore. He's something else. And the power I have, it exists to stop him. If he wakes up and I'm not there to stop him, and he hurts someone, that's on me. Even if I'm here. Even if I'm safe. It's my fault. It's not your fault, she said firmly. You aren't a god, Deku. You're one person. And right now, you're the person helping that family over there. She pointed to a young mother pushing a stroller, looking confused by the sudden hero presence. If a fight breaks out, who protects them if all the strong heroes are miles away? Izuku looked at the mother and child. Uraraka was right. Of course she was right. This was hero work. Saving people wasn't just about punching the bad guy. It was about ensuring the bad guy couldn't reach the people. You're right, Izuku exhaled, trying to let go of the tension. I need to focus. Midoriya! Brennan's voice crackled over the comms. Stop chit-chatting. We've got word from the police. Evacuation order is officially live. The raid team has breached the hospital. Start moving people. Now, Roger. The atmosphere shifted instantly. The pretense of a drill or gas leak vanished. The sirens began to wail across the city, a mournful, rising tone that made the birds scatter from the trees. Please move in an orderly fashion. Ida was already running, his engines revving. Head south. Do not return to your homes. Izuku moved. He activated full cowling, green lightning crackling around his body at a low 5%. He zipped down the street, knocking on doors, directing traffic. Please, you need to go. He told a group of teenagers loitering by a convenience store. Whoa, it's that kid from the sports festival, one of them said, holding up a phone. Hey, is this real? Are we under attack? Yes, Izuku said, his voice hard. Go. South. Now. The urgency in his voice scared them. They ran. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. The evacuation was slow. Too slow. People were confused. They wanted to pack bags. They wanted to find their cats. This is taking too long, Izuku muttered to himself, leaping to the top of a streetlight to get a better view. The traffic on the main artery was gridlocked. Burnin! Sector 4 traffic is stalled. Can we open the emergency lanes? Do it! Burnin yelled over the comms. Ida, get those cars moving. Izuku looked toward the mountain again. There was no smoke. No explosions. Maybe Aizawa and Endeavor had done it. Maybe they had captured Garaki and Shigaraki in their sleep. A wave of relief washed over him. If there was no boom, there was no fight. If there was no fight, they had won. Crack. It wasn't a sound. It was a sensation. Izuku gasped, his hands flying to his head. The fourth user's quirk, Danger Sense, didn't just buzz. It screamed. It felt like a railroad spike being driven into his temple. DKU! Uraraka yelled from the street below. What's wrong? Izuku fell from the streetlight, catching himself with Black Whip and landing in a crouch. He was panting, his eyes wide, pupils dilated to pinpricks. The pain was blinding. It wasn't directed at him. It was everywhere. It was the air. It was the ground. Something. Izuku choked out. Something is coming. What? Ida zoomed over. Midoriya? The mountain, Izuku whispered. He pointed a trembling finger. As if on cue, the comms in their ears exploded with noise. It wasn't tactical chatter. It was screaming. Pull back! Pull back! Decay! It's spreading! Ryukyu! Get in the air! The ground! Don't touch the ground! Then silence. Izuku watched in horror as the lush green mountain in the distance turned gray. It wasn't a shadow. It was death. The trees didn't fall, they disintegrated. The hospital, the massive concrete structure on the hill, simply crumbled into dust as if it were made of dry sand. And the dust was moving. It was flowing like a pyroclastic flow, a tidal wave of gray matter rushing down the slope, eating everything in its path. And it was heading straight for the city. No. Uraraka covered her mouth. Massive quirk activation detected. Brennan's voice was frantic. It's a wave of decay. It's moving at 60 miles per hour. It's gonna hit the city limits in less than 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Izuku looked at the gridlocked traffic. He looked at the families running on the sidewalks. He looked at the old man he had seen earlier, hobbling down the street with a cane. If that wave hit the city, everyone died. The buildings would collapse. The roads would vanish. The people would turn to dust. Retreat! Brennan ordered. All heroes, fall back to the secondary line. We can't stop that. We have to save who we can at the border. Run. That was the logical order. Survive. That was the mission. Izuku looked at Ida and Uraraka. They were terrified. They were waiting for the order to run, but the buzzing in Izuku's head hadn't stopped. It had changed. Underneath the screaming of danger sense, he felt something else. A pull. A challenge. You are the shield. Aizawa's words echoed in his mind. Not a bench warmer. A shield. I'm not leaving, Izuku said. Ida grabbed his shoulder. Midoriya! Did you see that? That is death approaching. We have to move the civilians. We can't move them fast enough. Izuku yelled, ripping his arm away. Look at the traffic. If we run, they die. All of them. So what do we do? Uraraka cried, tears forming in her eyes. We can't fight dust, Deku. Izuku looked at the oncoming wave. It was a mile away now, a towering wall of destruction. He looked at his hands. He looked at the terrified faces of the civilians who had stopped to watch their doom approach. He thought of the notebook he had kept since he was 4 years old. He thought of All Might holding up a pillar of concrete to save a student. He thought of the power coursing through his veins, a power meant to save. We don't fight it, Izuku said, his voice dropping into a register of calm that scared even him. Green lightning surged, not at 5%, not at 20%, but flaring up to 45%, the air pressure cracking around him. We lift them. What? Uraraka! I need you to float everything you can touch. Cars, buses, people. Don't worry about the weight limit, just tag them. But I can't lift a whole city block. You don't have to lift them high, Izuku said, his eyes glowing with green fire. Just get them off the ground. Decay travels through contact. If they aren't touching the ground, they don't die. But how do we move them? Ida asked, realizing the plan. Izuku turned to Ida. You're the engine, Ida. You and I, we're going to be the tugboats. We're going to chain them together with Black Whip. Uraraka floats them. We pull them. We pull them all into the sky. That's insane, Ida breathed. That's completely reckless. The ground began to shake. The roar of the decaying mountain was deafening now, like a landslide of glass. Ida adjusted his glasses. A wild grin broke across his face. But it is the job of the rear guard. Burnin! Izuku tapped his comms. We aren't retreating. We're executing an aerial evac. We need air support to catch stragglers. Get the helicopters low, Midoriya? Are you crazy? You'll be caught in the... Trust me, Izuku roared. He didn't wait for a response. He bent his knees, the concrete cracking under the pressure of One for All. Let's go! Izuku launched himself into the air, black tendrils of energy exploding from his wrists. He wasn't the decoy today. He wasn't the bait. He was the hero Deku. And he was about to catch a falling city. The sun was climbing higher, burning off the morning mist that clung to the Jaka city skyline, but it did nothing to burn away the cold knot of dread sitting in the pit of Izuku Midoriya's stomach. Please, sir, I understand your frustration, but this is a mandatory order from the Public Safety Commission. Tenya Ida's voice boomed, his hand chopping the air with robotic precision. You must evacuate the premises immediately. The elderly man standing in the doorway of a small, dusty antique shop didn't look impressed. He leaned on a cane, squinting up at the armored teenager through thick spectacles. Mandatory? Do you know how many mandatory gas leak evacuations we've had in the last 10 years? 0. Do you know why? Because the pipes in this district were replaced in the 90s. You heroes are just looking for a training drill. This is not a drill. Ida insisted, sweat beading on his forehead beneath his helmet. The threat is credible and imminent. Then where is it? The old man pointed a gnarled finger toward the blue, cloudless sky. I see sunshine. I see birds. I don't see any villains. Standing a few feet away, Izuku adjusted the grip on his gloves, feeling the restless energy twitching in his legs. This was the reality of the rear guard. It wasn't glorious battles or saving falling civilians from burning buildings. It was arguing with shopkeepers who were more afraid of looters than they were of a hypothetical supervillain. Let me try, Ida, Izuku said softly, stepping forward. Ida looked relieved but exasperated. Be my guest, Midoriya? He is, logically resistant. Izuku knelt slightly so he wasn't looming over the man. He took off his mask, revealing his freckled, earnest face. He didn't use his hero voice. He used the voice he used with his mother when she was worrying about him. Sir, Izuku said gently. My name is Deku. I know it looks calm right now. I know it feels like we're wasting your time. But the heroes fighting in the mountains right now, they are the strongest people I know. Endeavor, Mirko, Eraserhead. They are all there. The old man's expression flickered. Endeavor is here? Injaka? Yes, Izuku nodded, his eyes intense. They called everyone. And the fact that they called everyone means they are scared. And if Endeavor is scared, shouldn't we be careful? The old man looked at Izuku, really looked at him, searching for the lie. He didn't find one. He sighed, the fight draining out of him. I have a cat. Mr. Whiskers. I can't find the carrier. I'll carry him, Izuku promised. I'll make sure he gets to the transport. The old man grunted, turning back into the dark shop. Fine. But if you drop him, I'm suing you. Izuku let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. I won't drop him. As the man shuffled away, Ida placed a hand on Izuku's shoulder. Excellent interpersonal negotiation, Midoriya. I was attempting to appeal to his sense of civic duty, but you appealed to his sense of self-preservation and empathy. Efficient. It's not about efficiency, Ida, Izuku murmured, pulling his mask back up. He looked toward the distant mountains again. They were silent. Peacefully, terrifyingly silent. It's about fear. Everyone is afraid. Some people just hide it behind stubbornness. I'm hiding it too, he thought. The evacuation was proceeding, but it was agonizingly slow. Jaka's city was a sprawling urban center, a mix of old residential districts and modern commercial zones. The gas leak cover story had prevented widespread panic, but it had also prevented urgency. Cars were moving at a leisurely pace. People were stopping to lock their front doors 3 times. From his vantage point on top of a traffic light pole, Izuku surveyed the main thoroughfare, Ward 4's central artery. It was a disaster waiting to happen. 3 lanes of traffic were merging into one because of ongoing construction near the highway on-ramp. A sea of sedans, delivery trucks, and buses sat idling, pumping exhaust into the air. If an attack came now, if a Nomu broke through the line, this wouldn't be an evacuation. It would be a buffet. This is bad, Izuku muttered. His mind began to race, the familiar murmur of his tactical analysis taking over. The flow rate is less than 10 vehicles per minute. At this speed, clearing the sector will take 3 hours. We don't have 3 hours. We might not have 3 minutes. The bottleneck is the construction barrier on 5th Street, but the side streets, Maple and 3rd, are empty because they're one-way going north. Burnin'. Izuku tapped his comms. Come in. I'm a little busy, Deku. Burnin's voice crackled back, sounding stressed. I've got a nursing home on the east side that needs 5 specialized transports, and the police are dragging their feet. The main artery is clogged, Izuku said, speaking fast. The construction on 5th is choking the exit. We need to open the auxiliary routes. We can't, Burnin snapped. Those are one-way streets. Routing traffic against the flow will cause a head-on collision if people panic. Not if we guide them manually, Izuku countered. He was already moving, hopping from the light pole to the roof of a nearby truck, then to a balcony. I've memorized the city grid from the briefing packet. If Uraraka and I clear the concrete barriers on 3rd Avenue, we can siphon off the heavy transport trucks. That clears the center lane for families. Ida can use his speed to run point on Maple Street to ensure no incoming traffic blocks the counterflow. There was a pause on the line. Izuku could hear Burnin shouting orders to someone else in the background. You really think you can coordinate that mess, kid? She asked, her tone shifting from dismissive to calculating. I don't think, Izuku said, landing on a rooftop and looking down at the gridlock. He saw the puzzle pieces in his head, shifting and locking into place. I know. Give me the authority to redirect. Do it, Burnin barked. Uraraka, Ajri, you're with Midoriya. He's got tactical command of the traffic flow. Don't make me regret this. Roger. Izuku felt a surge of adrenaline. This was something he could do. He couldn't punch Shigaraki right now, but he could fight this traffic jam. Uraraka! Izuku called out as he saw her floating near a bus stop. Meet me at the intersection of 3rd and 5th. We need to move some Jersey barriers. On it. Uraraka didn't ask questions. She tapped her boots and floated into the air, swimming through the sky toward him. For the next 20 minutes, the benchwarmer worked harder than he ever had in a gym. Izuku was a blur of green lightning. He dropped into the intersection, startling drivers. Attention! He shouted, projecting his voice. We are opening a secondary route. Trucks and buses, follow the pink hero. Passenger cars, stay in this lane. He pointed to Uraraka. She touched the heavy concrete dividers blocking the construction zone. Release! With a wave of her hand, the ton-heavy blocks floated into the air, drifting harmlessly to the side of the road. The bottleneck opened. Go! 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 Izuku waved his arms, directing the flow. It worked. The knot of metal and frustration began to loosen. The heavy trucks rumbled down the newly opened side street, leaving the main road clear for the faster cars. Ida, Maple Street is yours. Izuku relayed. Understood. I shall become the pace car. Ida's voice came back. Moments later, Izuku saw a blue blur streak down the parallel street, guiding a column of confused but moving vehicles. Tsuyu Ajiri landed next to Izuku, crouching on the asphalt like a frog. Midoriya-chan, you're sweating a lot. Are you okay? Ribbit. Izuku wiped his forehead with his forearm. I'm fine, Tsu. Just keeping the pace. You're doing good, she said, her large eyes observant. Burnin is impressed. She said you organize chaos like a pro. I just want them out, Izuku said, watching a minivan filled with crying children speed past. I want everyone out before. He trailed off. He didn't finish the sentence. Before the sky falls. An hour passed. The sun was fully up now, baking the asphalt. The worst of the traffic had cleared, leaving the streets eerily empty. The silence returned, heavier than before. Burnin ordered a short rotation for water breaks. Izuku found himself sitting on the edge of a pedestrian overpass, his legs dangling over the empty highway below. He held a plastic water bottle, the condensation cool against his gloves, but he hadn't taken a sip. His eyes were fixed on the mountain range to the north. Penny for your thoughts? Izuku turned. Uraraka sat down next to him, placing her helmet on her lap. Her hair was messy, stuck to her forehead with sweat. She looked tired, but her eyes were warm. They're not worth a penny, Izuku managed a weak smile. Just worrying. About the mission? About everything. Izuku leaned back on his hands. Aizawa-sensei. Kaken, they were right to put me here. I know that logically. If Shigaraki wakes up and sees me, I'm a liability. I endanger everyone around me just by existing near him. Don't say that, Uraraka frowned. It's true though, Izuku said, staring at the plastic bottle. He squeezed it, the plastic crinkling. One for all, it's a magnet for him. Today, my job is to hide. To be the one thing a hero shouldn't be, absent. You're not absent, Deku, Uraraka said firmly. She gestured to the empty highway below them. Look at that. An hour ago, this was a parking lot. Thousands of people were stuck here. If the villains attacked then, those people would be sitting ducks. You cleared it. You and your crazy muttering and your maps. She bumped his shoulder with hers. You saved them. Maybe you didn't punch a villain to do it, but you saved them. Isn't that what we do? Izuku looked at the empty road. She was right. He knew she was right. But the feeling in his chest, the buzz, was getting louder. It wasn't painful yet. It was a low-frequency hum, vibrating at the base of his skull. It felt like standing next to a massive generator. One for all was restless. The vestiges were shifting. Do you feel that? Izuku whispered. Feel what? Uraraka looked around. The wind? No, Izuku touched his temple. It's like static. In my head. Uraraka's expression tightened. She knew about his powers now, not everything, but enough. She knew about Black Whip. She knew there were others inside his quirk. Is it him? Shigaraki? I don't know, Izuku admitted. Usually, danger sense is sharp. Like a stab. This feels like waiting. He closed his eyes, trying to focus on the sensation. He tried to reach out to the first user, to Nana Shimura. What is it? What's happening? There was no verbal answer. Just an image flashing in his mind, a vision of dust. Gray, choking dust. And a sensation of cold. Midoriya! Uraraka! Brennan's voice shouted from the street below, breaking his trance. Break's over. We've got stragglers in Sector 4B. A group of civilians refusing to leave a pet store. Let's move! Izuku shook his head, clearing the static. He stood up, forcing a smile for Uraraka. Right. Let's go. But as he turned to follow her, he cast one last look at the mountain. For a split second, he thought he saw a flash of blue light near the peak. Just my imagination, he told himself. Please, let it be my imagination. They arrived at the pet store 10 minutes later. It was a chaotic scene. The owner, a woman with a quirk that gave her feline ears, was trying to load 20 cages of birds into a sedan that could fit maybe 3. I can't leave them. She was sobbing. They'll starve. Ma'am, we will send a secondary transport for the animals if we can, Ida was saying, trying to wrestle a cage of parakeets into the trunk. But you must prioritize your own safety. I'm not leaving without my babies. Izuku stepped in, grabbing 2 cages. We'll take them, he said. Uraraka can float the cages and tow them behind the car. I'll run alongside to stabilize them. Just get in the driver's seat, please. It took another 5 minutes to rig the makeshift transport train. By the time the woman drove off, towing a floating cloud of bird cages, the street was completely silent. That's the last of this block, Brennan said, checking her datapad. She wiped soot from her face, not from fire, but from the dirty work of evacuation. Sector 4 is 98% clear. We're doing good, kids. Really good. She looked at the 3 students. I gotta admit, I thought babysitting 1A would be a pain. But you guys, you work hard. Endeavor trained you well. We learned from the best. Shoto's absence was felt in that statement, but Izuku smiled anyway. Alright, Brennan stretched her arms. Let's regroup at the main intersection. We'll hold the perimeter until we get the all-clear signal from the boss. They began to walk back toward the center of the district. The silence of the city was profound now. No cars. No voices. Just the sound of their boots on the pavement, and the wind whistling through the alleys. It's too quiet, Tsuyu remarked, hopping along a fence. Even the birds have stopped singing. Izuku stopped walking. The buzz in his head had stopped. The static cut out instantly. It was replaced by a void. A sudden, sucking emptiness that was more terrifying than the noise. Midoriya? Uraraka stopped, turning to look at him. Izuku's eyes were wide. His pupils were trembling. Why did it stop? Then it hit him. It hadn't stopped. It had been drowned out. Crack. A sound like the breaking of the world echoed from the mountains. It wasn't an explosion. It was deeper. It was the sound of bedrock snapping. The ground beneath their feet jumped. Not a vibration, a violent, vertical lurch that knocked Ida off his balance. Earthquake? Brennan yelled, steadying herself against the lamppost. No, Izuku whispered. The air pressure dropped. The wind suddenly reversed direction, rushing toward the mountains as if being inhaled by a massive set of lungs. Then, the calms in their ears screamed. It wasn't words. It was pure white noise. Static. Then, fragments of voices cutting through the interference, filled with raw, unadulterated terror. Contact lost with Team Endeavor. It's gone. The hospital is gone. Decay. Wave approaching. Izuku spun around, facing the north. The horizon was gone. Where the green foothills and the hospital had been, there was now a wall. A wall of gray. It rose higher than the skyscrapers, a churning, boiling tsunami of dust. It was eating the world. The mountains weren't just collapsing, they were dissolving. The trees, the rocks, the roads, they turned to powder upon contact, fueling the wave, making it bigger, faster. And at the center of the dust cloud, even from miles away, Izuku could feel it. A malice so cold, so pure, it made All for One's presence in Kamino Ward feel like a gentle breeze. This was hatred given form. What is that? Uraraka breathed, her voice trembling. The raid failed, Izuku said. His voice sounded hollow to his own ears. The realization washed over him like ice water. Shigaraki is awake. That dust. Burnet's eyes were wide, her face pale. If that's Shigaraki's quirk, anything that touches it dies. Izuku finished. He watched the wave. He used his analysis quirk, or rather, his habit. Distance, 4 miles. Speed, approximately 60 to 70 miles per hour. Topography, downhill slope accelerating the flow. He did the math in a fraction of a second. Time to impact, less than 4 minutes. He looked at the city behind them. Even with the evacuation, there were stragglers. The police rear guard. The heroes holding the perimeter. The people still in the shelters on the north side. They couldn't run fast enough. The danger sense exploded in his skull then, a physical blow that forced him to his knees. It wasn't warning him of an attack. It was screaming at him that death was here. Deku! Ida grabbed his arm, trying to haul him up. We must retreat. We have to outrun it. Izuku looked up. His green eyes were glowing, the energy of one for all flooding his system, reacting to the threat of its ancient enemy. We can't outrun it, Izuku said, his voice changing, layering with a strange, harmonic distortion. Not everyone. He looked at Uraraka. She was paralyzed by the sight of the approaching apocalypse. Uraraka, Izuku said sharply. She snapped her head toward him. How much weight can you float? What? She blinked, tears forming in the corners of her eyes. I don't know. A lot. But if I use too much, I get sick. Get ready to get sick, Izuku said. He stood up, the concrete beneath his iron saws cracking as he channeled 45%. Black whip erupted from his back, not as thin tendrils, but as thick, roiling cables of dark energy. Midoriya, what are you planning? Burnin yelled, her flames flaring defensively. That wave will kill us. We need to move. If we run, the city dies, Izuku said, turning to face the oncoming storm. The wind whipped his hair back, exposing his determined face. The ground is the danger. If we stay on the ground, we turn to dust. He looked at his friends. The fear was there, yes. But beneath the fear, he saw the resolve. They were heroes. We aren't going to run, Izuku declared. We're going to fly. The buzzing in his head reached a crescendo, blending with the roar of the crumbling mountains. The calm was over. The decay had begun, and Izuku Midoriya was the only thing standing in its way. The sound of the world ending was not a boom. It was a hiss. It was the sound of a billion grains of sand rubbing together, amplified until it drowned out the sirens, the wind, and the beating of Izuku Midoriya's own heart. It was the sound of molecular bonds snapping, of concrete turning to powder, of steel returning to ore, of biology reducing to carbon. Izuku stood frozen for a microsecond, his boots rooted to the asphalt of the Jaka City intersection. His eyes were locked on the horizon, which was no longer a line of green mountains and blue sky, but a rushing, towering wall of gray, the wave of decay. It was mesmerizing in its horror. It moved like water, fluid and churning, yet it possessed a weight that water lacked. It tumbled over itself, swallowing the foothills, the highway overpasses, the outlying transmission towers. The towers didn't fall. They simply ceased to exist from the bottom up, the tops hanging in the air for a fraction of a second before crumbling into the voracious cloud below. Midoriya! Burnet's scream shattered the trance. She was hovering 10 feet in the air, her face a mask of disbelief and professional panic. What the hell was that order? Fly. We have to run. We have to get the trucks moving south. We can't, Izuku said. His voice was eerily calm, the calm of a computer processing a fatal error. He turned to face the pro-hero, his green eyes glowing with the energy of one for all. Look at the speed. It's moving at 65 miles per hour and accelerating due to the slope. The traffic on the south exit is moving at 20. If we stay on the ground, the tail end of the convoy gets caught in 3 minutes. That's 2,000 people. So we just die. Burnin yelled, flames flaring from her hair in agitation. No, Izuku said. He turned to his classmates. Uraraka. Ida. Tsuyu. Listen to me. Uraraka was pale, her hands trembling as she clutched her helmet. Ida looked ready to vibrate out of his armor. Tsuyu was crouched low, her survival instincts screaming at her to flee. The ground is death, Izuku stated, pointing at the asphalt. Shigaraki's quirk spreads through contact. If you touch the ground, or anything touching the ground, you decay. But the air is safe. You want to float the convo, Uraraka whispered, realizing the scale of what he was asking. Deku, there are dozens of cars. Buses. People on foot. I can't. I've never done that much. You don't have to lift them high, Izuku said, stepping closer to her, gripping her shoulders. Just an inch. Just enough to break the connection with the earth. I'll use Black Whip to tether them together. Ida, you'll use Recipro to pull the chain. Tsuyu, Burnin, you grab the stragglers and throw them to us. Throw them? Tsuyu croaked. We don't have time to be gentle. Izuku roared, the time for politeness gone. The roar of the approaching wave was getting louder, a physical vibration rattling their teeth. We have 180 seconds before that wave hits the city limits. Move! The command snapped them into action. It wasn't the voice of a student. It was the voice of a leader on a battlefield. T-160 seconds. The intersection of 5th and Main exploded into chaos. Everyone out of your cars. No, stay in. Stay in. Burnin corrected herself mid-shout, realizing Deku's plan required the vehicles to act as lifeboats. Keep your windows up. Do not touch the door handles if the car is on the ground. Izuku moved like a green lightning bolt. He leaped onto the roof of the lead bus, a municipal transport filled with elderly evacuees. Black Whip, dark, tendril-like energy exploded from his back. It wasn't the thin, controlled whips he used for capture. These were thick, jagged ropes of power, fueled by 45% of One for All and the raw adrenaline of impending doom. The whips lashed out, wrapping around the bumpers of 3 sedans, a delivery truck, and a police cruiser. Uraraka! Now! Ochako Uraraka sprinted past the vehicles. She didn't have time to touch each one carefully. She slapped the fenders, the hoods, the trunks. 5 fingertips. Release. Float. 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 As soon as her pads made contact, gravity lost its hold. The heavy bus groaned as its tires left the pavement. The sedans drifted upward like bubbles in a soda glass. Ida! Izuku screamed, straining against the weight. Even without gravity, mass was still mass. Inertia was still a law of physics. Tow line! Ida revved his engines until they whined like jet turbines. Recipro turbo. He grabbed the end of the longest Black Whip tendril. With a burst of blue fire from his mufflers, he shot forward, not running, but skimming the air, dragging the floating flotilla of vehicles behind him. They moved. It worked. A train of floating steel began to drift south, disconnected from the deadly earth. Next batch! Izuku yelled, releasing the whips once the momentum was set. He turned back to the gridlock. T-120 seconds. The sky was darkening. The wave was tall enough now to block out the sun. The leading edge of the decay was hitting the outskirts, the gas stations, the fast food joints, the empty fields. Izuku watched as a billboard simply dissolved. 1 second it was there, advertising a new smartphone. The next, it was gray dust, joining the cloud. Faster! Izuku gritted his teeth. He was multitasking on a level that made his brain ache. Danger sense was a constant, blinding migraine, warning him of the death approaching from the north. But he had to ignore it. He had to focus on the vectors. 3 cars on the left. 2 on the right. 1 family on foot. Tsuyu! Izuku pointed to a family running down the sidewalk, too slow to reach the transport zone. Ribbit! Ajui launched herself with her powerful legs. She wrapped her tongue around the father's waist, grabbed the children with her hands, and leaped. She didn't land on the ground. She landed on the roof of a floating van that Uraraka had just tagged. Stay here! Tsuyu ordered them, sticking to the roof. Don't touch the road. Burnin was in the air, using her fire to create thermal updrafts, trying to push the dust cloud back. But it was like trying to stop a tidal wave with a hairdryer. It's not stopping! Burnin yelled into her comms. Headquarters. Anyone? We have a catastrophic event in Sector 4. The city is being eaten. There was no reply. The static from the destruction had scrambled the long-range signals. Izuku landed on a lamppost, surveying the scene. They had managed to float maybe 50 vehicles. A sky train of survivors bobbing in the air, pulled by a straining Ida. But there were still hundreds on the ground, and the wave was crossing the river. The riverbed didn't stop it. The water didn't stop it. The decay spread through the river bottom, turning the mud to dust, causing the water to flash boil and evaporate into dirty steam. The bridge collapsed, not breaking, but disintegrating mid-fall. "It's too fast," Izuku whispered. He needed more hands. He needed more whips. Fourth. Fifth. Sixth. Izuku screamed inside his mind, calling out to the vestiges. "Help me!" He felt a surge. Not a new quirk, but a reinforcement. The feeling of Black Whip changed. It became more tactile, more responsive. It felt less like energy, and more like an extension of his own nervous system. Izuku leaped back into the fray. He didn't just use whips from his back. He shot them from his fingers, his elbows, his knees. He became a spider of black energy. He grabbed a streetlight and ripped it from the ground, using it as a bat to swat debris away. He grabbed a cluster of terrified teenagers and hauled them into the air. Uraraka! She was running, stumbling, behind him. Her face was green. She was holding her breath, cheeks puffed out. She was far past her limit. "Release!" She slapped the teenagers' shoes as Izuku held them up. They floated. "I can't hold it." Uraraka gasped, vomit threatening to spill. "Just a little longer," Izuku pleaded. "Just until the wave stops." T-60 seconds. The sound was deafening now. The roar of the city dying. The first buildings of Jaku's city proper began to fall. The sheer scale of it was nauseating. A 10-story apartment complex was hit by the wave. The bottom floor vanished. The building dropped, and as it touched the dust, the next floor vanished. It pancaked into oblivion in seconds. The wind generated by the collapse was hurricane force. It buffeted the floating cars, threatening to smash them into each other. "Ida! Stabilize the line!" Izuku commanded over the comms. "I cannot!" Ida's voice was strained, breathless. "The turbulence! The cars are crashing." Izuku made a choice. He couldn't save everyone on the ground anymore. The wave was here. He had to save the ones they had already lifted. "Burnin! Get to the front! Help Ida steer! What about you?" Burnin shouted, blasting fire to turn a floating truck away from a building. "I'm the rear guard." Izuku turned to face the wave. It was towering over him now, 100 feet high. He stood on the roof of the very last car in the floating chain, a small, beat-up hatchback containing a crying couple holding a dog. He was the anchor. The last line of defense. "Please," the woman in the car sobbed, looking at him through the rear window. "We're going to die." Izuku looked at her. His mask was torn. His costume was covered in grit. But his smile, that shaky, terrifying, reassuring all-might smile, was there. "No," Izuku said. "You're safe. I am here." He turned back to the dust. He clamped his boots onto the roof of the car. He gathered one for all, 100%. He couldn't use 100% on his whole body. He would explode. But he could focus it. He wound back his right arm. The pressure began to build. The red veins of one for all crackled violently. The air around his fist distorted. "If I punch the dust, I might just spread it," he analyzed in a split second. "I need to create a barrier. A wall of air pressure so dense that the dust can't pass through it." Delaware. The wave crested. It was about to swallow the car. Smash! Air Force. Izuku flicked his fingers. Not one. All five. Bang! The sound was like a cannon shot. The shockwave erupted from his hand, a cone of compressed air that slammed into the wall of decay. For a moment, physics fought a war. The decay tried to eat the air, but the pressure was too high. The wind blast carved a massive hole in the dust cloud, blowing it backward. The force of the recoil shot the hatchback, and the entire chain of floating cars connected to it, forward, away from the city, away from death. Izuku screamed as his fingers broke. The pain was sharp, familiar, and grounding. The car chain accelerated, pushed to safety by the blast. But the recoil also pushed Izuku back. He lost his footing on the roof. He tumbled into the air. "DKU! Uraraka screamed from 3 cars up. Izuku fell. Below him, the street was gone. It was just a churning gray ocean of death. I'm going to fall into it, he thought. I'm going to turn to dust. Time slowed. He saw the gray particles reaching up for him. He saw the face of his mother. He saw All Might move. He didn't use his arms. He used his legs. He kicked the empty air. Black Whip! A tendril shot out, not finding a building, but finding the bumper of the car he had just saved. It snapped taut. Izuku swung. He skimmed just feet above the gray ocean. He could feel the heat of the decay, the anti-life radiating from it. The soles of his iron boots sizzled as the very air just inches above the dust tried to eat them. He pulled himself up, muscles screaming, and landed back on the roof of the hatchback. He was alive. The aftermath. The wave stopped. It didn't stop because they fought it back. It stopped because it ran out of range. The quirk had a limit, a radius. The gray tsunami rolled another 100 yards, swallowed a park, swallowed a gas station, and then settled. The dust hung in the air, a thick, choking fog. But the aggressive expansion ceased. Silence returned. But it wasn't the silence of peace. It was the silence of a grave. The floating convoy drifted. Uraraka, eyes rolled back in her head, finally reached her limit. She vomited over the side of the truck she was riding, and then collapsed. Release. She whispered weakly. The quirk deactivated. Fortunately, they had drifted over a golf course south of the city, outside the decay zone. The cars dropped the last few feet, bouncing on their shocks, skidding on the grass. Metal crunched, glass shattered, but they didn't dissolve. They were on solid ground. Safe ground. Izuku slid off the roof of the hatchback. He landed on the grass and fell to his knees. His right hand was purple, the fingers twisted at odd angles. His lungs burned. Report. Vernon landed nearby, stumbling. Status check. Everyone sound off. Ida, here, the engine hero gasped, leaning against the tree. His engines were smoking, stalling out from the strain. Uraraka is down, but breathing, Tsuyu croaked, hopping over to check on her friend. Izuku didn't answer. He stared back at the city. Jaka's city was gone. Or rather, a third of it was. A perfect semicircle of destruction had been carved out of the map. Where there had been homes, schools, and lives, there was now a crater of gray dust. We didn't save everyone, Izuku whispered. He knew the numbers. He had done the math. The traffic jam. The people in the houses. Even with the air evac, even with the warning, thousands must have been caught. Tears pricked his eyes, mixing with the grit on his face. I wasn't fast enough. Don't you dare. Vernon walked over, grabbing him by his uninjured shoulder. She shook him hard. Don't you dare start that I'm not good enough crap, kid. Look, she pointed to the golf course. Hundreds of people were climbing out of the cars. People were weeping, hugging their children, kissing the ground. The teenagers Tsuyu had thrown were huddling together. The old man with the cat was sitting on the grass, clutching the carrier. You saved them, Brennan said, her voice cracking slightly. That wave. It should have killed all of them. You made a train out of thin air, Midoriya. You saved them. Izuku looked at the survivors. He felt a flicker of warmth in his chest. But it was quickly extinguished. Buzz. The danger sense didn't spike. It didn't scream. It returned to that low, heavy hum from before. But now, it was specific. It wasn't atmospheric. It was personal. Izuku stood up, clutching his broken hand. He looked across the crater, toward the center of the destruction. The dust cloud was settling. And in the distance, miles away, hovering above the ruins of the hospital, was a figure. It was too far to see with the naked eye. But Izuku didn't need eyes. He felt it. He felt the gaze. It was heavy, slimy, and ancient. It felt like a hand closing around his throat. One for all. The voice wasn't in his ears. It was in the quirk. It echoed in the vestige world, a dark intrusion into the sanctuary of the past users. Izuku gasped, clutching his head. Midoriya? Tsuyu noticed his distress. What is it? Ribbit? He's here, Izuku whispered. Who? Shigaraki. Izuku closed his eyes. In the darkness of his mind, he saw two red eyes staring back at him. He felt a hunger that was bottomless, and he realized something terrifying. The wave hadn't just been an attack. It had been a search. Shigaraki had dusted the ground to flush out the rats. And now that the dust had settled, he was scanning for the one light that refused to go out. He knows, Izuku said, his voice trembling. He knows I'm here. The ruins of Jaku Hospital. Tamura Shigaraki floated in the air. His body was perfect. His white hair flowed in the wind. The cape of Exless, the hero he had just killed, draped over his shoulders. He looked down at the devastation he had wrought. It was beautiful. A blank canvas. But he wasn't looking at the dust. He was looking south. He could feel it. A little pulsing light in the distance. A chaotic, terrified, defiant little light. One for all, Shigaraki whispered. His voice was raspy, but it carried power. Tamura. A voice echoed in his head. All for one. Go to him. Take it. It is yours. Shut up, sensei, Shigaraki muttered. I know. He ignored Endeavor, who was screaming and blasting fire at him from below. He ignored Ryukyu, who was trying to bite him. He ignored Gran Torino. They were insects. He turned his body mid-air. He generated a shockwave from his palms, blasting the air behind him. Boom! He broke the sound barrier instantly. He wasn't heading for the heroes. He wasn't heading for the city center. He was heading for the golf course. The golf course. Incoming! Izuku screamed the warning before anyone else saw it. A black dot appeared in the sky above the crater. It grew larger in a heartbeat. The sound of the sonic boom hit them a second later, shattering the windows of the surviving cars. He's coming for me, Izuku realized. The blood drained from his face. If he stayed here, with the evacuees, he looked at the families on the grass. They were safe from the decay, but they weren't safe from him. If Shigaraki landed here, he would kill everyone just to get to Izuku. I have to go, Izuku said. Where? Ida yelled over the wind. Away from them. Izuku didn't wait for permission. He didn't check his stamina. He ignored the pain in his hand. He channeled 45% into his legs. Tell Aizawa I'm sorry. Izuku launched himself into the air, traveling perpendicular to the evacuation zone. He headed west, toward the rocky, uninhabited cliffs that bordered the city. DKU. No! Uraraka screamed, trying to stand up, but her legs failed her. Izuku flew. He pushed himself harder than he ever had. He had to be the rabbit. He had to be the lure. Come and get me, he thought, projecting the thought as loud as he could. I'm right here. He looked back over his shoulder. The black dot shifted course. It ignored the civilians. It ignored the heroes. It banked sharp left, following him. The hunter had found his prey. But as Izuku landed on the first rocky outcropping of the cliffs, preparing to turn and fight, a shadow fell over him. Not from Shigaraki. From above. A screech pierced the air, inhuman, guttural, and mindless. Izuku looked up. Descending from the clouds was a nightmare. A Hien Nomu. Not one of the ones from the hospital raid. A stray. Or a scout. It had no eyes, just exposed brain and massive, winged arms. Collateral damage, a voice chuckled in Izuku's ear, not from the Nomu, but from the vestige connection. Shigaraki was mocking him. The Nomu dived. Izuku gritted his teeth, raising his good arm. He was alone. He was broken. And he was about to fight a war on two fronts. Bring it on! The silence at ground zero was not empty. It was heavy. It pressed down on the lungs of the heroes who had survived the initial wave of disintegration, a suffocating blanket of gray dust and despair. At the epicenter of what used to be the Jaku General Hospital, the air shimmered with heat. The ground, or what was left of it, was a scorched, perfectly smooth crater, scooped out of the earth as if by a titan's spoon. Suspended in the center of this void, floating effortlessly on a cushion of air pressure and raw power, was Tamura Shigaraki. He looked different. The scraggly, hunched villain who had scratched at his neck in the bar at Kamino was gone. In his place was a being of terrible perfection. His hair had turned snow-white, flowing behind him like a halo. His skin was pale, almost translucent, etched with the scars of a procedure that had rewritten his biology. Endeavor, the #1 hero, hovered 50 feet away, his flames roaring in defiance of the silence. Beside him, Ryukyu, in her massive dragon form, clawed at the air, her eyes wide with primal fear. Gran Torino zipped between debris, his breath coming in ragged gasps. They were ready to die. They were ready to throw everything they had at this monster to stop him from taking another step. But Shigaraki wasn't looking at them. His red eyes were half closed, his head tilted to the side as if listening to a song only he could hear. He raised a hand, looking at his own palm, flexed the fingers, and then lowered it. "Endeavor," Shigaraki said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried across the crater with unnatural clarity, cutting through the roar of Endeavor's flames. "You're loud, you monster!" Endeavor shouted, gathering a sphere of superheated plasma in his fist. "What have you done? Answer me." Shigaraki didn't answer. He didn't even blink. He simply turned his back on the number one hero. It was an insult so profound, so dismissive, that it stunned Endeavor more than an attack would have. To Shigaraki, the strongest hero in Japan was nothing more than background noise. A buzzing fly. "Where is it?" Shigaraki whispered to himself. Inside the chaotic storm of his mind, two consciousnesses were merging. There was Tenko Shimura, the boy who hated everything, filled with a destructive itch that demanded the world turn to dust. And there was All for One, the ancient warlord, cold and calculating, whose desire was not destruction, but acquisition. One for all. The name pulsed in his brain. It was a hunger. A magnetic pull. Shigaraki closed his eyes and inhaled. He could smell the ozone of quirks. He could taste the desperation of the heroes. But underneath it all he felt it, a thrumming, golden light. A heartbeat that matched his own in power, but opposed it in nature. It was distant. Weak? No, not weak. Suppressed. Hiding. "Found you," Shigaraki grinned. The skin around his mouth cracked dryly. He turned his head sharply to the south. Gran Torino froze midair. The old hero, who had trained All Might and watched the rise of All for One, recognized that look. He had seen it decades ago. It was the look of a predator locking onto its true prey. "Endeavor!" Gran Torino screamed, his voice cracking. "Don't let him move. He's not targeting us." "What?" Endeavor blinked. "He's after the kid. He's after One for All." The name One for All meant nothing to Endeavor in a literal sense. He knew it only as All Might's quirk name, a secret he had barely scratched the surface of. But he understood the urgency in the old man's voice. Prominence burn. Endeavor didn't hesitate. He unleashed his ultimate move, a beam of concentrated solar fire capable of vaporizing a building. The column of white-hot energy slammed into Shigaraki's back. Or it should have. At the last microsecond, Shigaraki bent his knees. The air around him warped. Boom. He didn't dodge the fire. He outran it. Shigaraki launched himself from the air itself, kicking off the atmospheric pressure with enough force to shatter the sound barrier instantly. The shockwave dispersed Endeavor's flames like a candle in a hurricane. The ground of the crater cracked further, sending a plume of dust miles into the sky. When the fire cleared, the spot where Shigaraki had been hovering was empty. Endeavor whipped his head around, tracking the sonic boom. A trail of displaced air and shattered clouds carved a straight line through the sky, heading south. "He's ignoring us," Ryukyu roared, her dragon voice booming. "He's heading for the city. The evacuation zone. Midoriya is there." Aizawa's voice cut in over the emergency channel. The Erasure hero sounded calm, but those who knew him could hear the terror bleeding through the edges. Midoriya was assigned to the rear guard. Endeavor felt a chill that had nothing to do with temperature. The boy. The one Shoto was always talking about. The one who broke his bones. "Chase him!" Endeavor commanded, igniting his engines to their maximum output. "If he reaches the city, everyone dies." The airspace above the Jaku suburbs. Izuku Midoriya was flying, but he wasn't soaring. He was falling with style, frantically, desperately. He had abandoned the safety of the golf course, leaving behind Uraraka, Ida, and the hundreds of civilians he had just saved from the decay wave. He had to. Staying with them was a death sentence, not for him, but for them. "He's coming." The thought was a drumbeat in his skull. The danger sense quirk, usually a sharp stab of pain warning of an incoming attack, had transformed into a constant, sickening vertigo. It was a compass needle, and it was pointing directly behind him. Izuku didn't look back. He didn't need to. He could feel the malice approaching. It felt cold and slimy, like a wet hand sliding up his spine. Distance, 4 miles. Closing speed, Mach 1.5 maybe? He's faster than me. Much faster. Izuku gritted his teeth, wind whipping tears from his eyes. He was channeling 45% of One for All into his legs and torso, his body wreathed in green lightning. He used Black Whip to snag the tops of the few remaining transmission towers and trees that had survived the edge of the decay zone, slinging himself forward to conserve momentum. He looked down at his right hand. It was a mess. 2 fingers were definitely broken, swollen and purple from the Delaware smash he had used to push the dust back. The pain was throbbing, sharp and hot, but he shoved it into a box in the back of his mind labeled "Deal with later." Where do I go? He scanned the horizon. To the south lay the evacuation centers. To the east, another city. West. To the west were the jagged peaks of the Jaka Alps. Rocky. Desolate. No roads. No houses. Just stone and snow. If I fight him there, no one gets hurt. Just me. It was a grim calculation, but the only one that made sense. Eraserhead. Can you hear me? Izuku shouted into his comms, the wind tearing the words from his mouth. There was a burst of static, then the strained voice of his teacher. Midoriya. Report. We lost visual on Shigaraki. He's moving south at supersonic speeds. I know. Izuku yelled. He's tracking me. I can feel him. Tracking you? Aizawa's voice dropped. The search, he has a search quirk? It's One for All, sensei. He can sense it. He's coming for me. Izuku swung around a rocky outcrop, his boots scraping sparks off the stone. I'm luring him away from the evac zone. I'm heading west to the mountains. Midoriya, do not engage. Aizawa barked. You cannot fight him alone. He dusted the hospital in seconds. He fought Endeavor without scratching. You have to. I have to keep him away from the people. Izuku interrupted. It was the first time he had ever cut off his teacher. If he catches me in the city, thousands die. I'm the bait, sensei. Let me be the bait. Silence on the line. Then, a heavy sigh. Gran Torino and Endeavor are in pursuit. Buy time. Do not die. That is an order, Roger. Izuku cut the connection. He didn't want them to hear him hyperventilating. He crested a ridge, the city now a smear of gray and green behind him. Ahead lay the mountains. He just needed 5 more minutes. Just 5 minutes to get deep enough into the range that Shigaraki's decay wouldn't reach the flatlands. Buzz. The danger sense spiked. Not from behind. Above. Izuku looked up. The clouds parted. It wasn't Shigaraki. It was a creature straight out of a nightmare. It had the sleek, muscular build of a Nomu, but leaner than the black USJ beast. Its skin was a pale gray, and massive, leathery wings sprouted from its back. But the worst part was the head, or lack thereof. Where a face should have been, there was only exposed brain tissue and a jagged row of teeth. A near-high-end Nomu. It didn't roar. It didn't scream. It simply folded its wings and dived, dropping out of the sky like a kinetic missile aimed directly at Izuku's skull. Get out of my way! Izuku kicked off the cliff face, spinning in midair. He lashed out with Black Whip, aiming for a sturdy rock formation to pull himself out of the trajectory. The Nomu was faster. It adjusted its dive mid-flight, banking sharply. Its clawed hand lashed out. Slash. Izuku barely managed to bring his arms up in a cross block. The claws raked across his reinforced gauntlets, shredding the metal and tearing into the fabric of his costume. The force of the impact was like being hit by a train. Izuku was spiked downward. He smashed into the rocky slope, tumbling end over end, crashing through scrub brush and boulders. He came to a stop in a cloud of dust, coughing. His left arm was numb. His costume was torn. Get up. You have to get up. He scrambled to his feet, ignoring the screaming protest of his bruised ribs. He looked up. The Nomu was hovering above him, its wings beating slowly, kicking up dust. It had no eyes, but it was watching him. Target. Acquired, the Nomu gurgled. It could speak. Boy. Green. You have to be kidding me, Izuku whispered, sweat dripping down his nose. He checked his mental map. Shigaraki was 2 minutes away. Maybe less. And now, the path was blocked. Move! Izuku roared. He didn't wait for the creature to attack. He attacked first. St. Louis smash! He jumped, twisting his body into a high-speed roundhouse kick. Green lightning crackled violently. He aimed for the creature's neck, hoping to sever the connection to the brain. The gnome caught his leg. It didn't block it. It caught it. Izuku's eyes widened. The creature's hand was like a vice around his shin. The impact of 45% of 1 for all dispersed harmlessly through the creature's shock absorption quirk. Weak, the gnome hissed. It spun, throwing Izuku toward the cliff wall. Izuku twisted in the air, firing Black Whip to catch himself before he splattered against the granite. He hung there, suspended by black tendrils, panting. This was bad. This was catastrophe. He was trapped. Behind him, the ultimate evil was approaching at the speed of sound. In front of him, a biological war machine blocked the only escape route. Think, Deku. Think. Option A, fight the gnome. It takes time. Time I don't have. If Shigaraki catches me while I'm fighting, I'm dead. Option B, run around it. It flies. It's faster than me in the air. Option C. There was no option C. Fine, Izuku growled. The green lightning around him intensified, the sparks turning jagged and wild. If I can't run, I'll go through you. The chaser's airspace Sector 4. Endeavor was pushing his body to the limit. The heat generated by his flash fire fist was raising his internal temperature to dangerous levels. His vision was blurring at the edges. Faster! He screamed at himself. He could see the trail Shigaraki had left, a tunnel of displaced air. He was closing the distance, but barely. Endeavor! Ryukyu called out from his left flank. She was flying in her dragon form, Gran Torino clutching her back. I see something! West of the city. In the foothills, Endeavor squinted against the wind. In the distance, flashes of green light illuminated the rocky terrain. Combat, Gran Torino shouted over the rush of wind. The kids engaged. But Shigaraki isn't there yet. Then who is he fighting? Endeavor demanded. Does it matter? Gran Torino spat. If he stopped, he's a sitting duck. We have to intercept Shigaraki before he reaches that fight. Endeavor looked at the trajectory. Shigaraki was a black blur ahead of them. The green flashes were to the side. Shigaraki was going to reach Midoriya first. Burnin! Endeavor tapped his comms. Status on the evacuation. Evac is, it's a mess, boss. Burnin sounded shaken. We got the air train down, but people are panicked. We're holding the perimeter at the golf course. Why? Midoriya is cut off. Endeavor relayed. He's drawing the villain away from you. Hold your ground. Do not send anyone to help him. They will just get in the way. What? You're leaving the intern alone? I'm trying to get there. Endeavor roared. Just do your job, he cut the line. He focused every ounce of his will into his feet. Enji Todoroki, you spent your whole life trying to be the strongest. Trying to surpass All Might. Now, a child is doing the job you failed to do at the hospital. If that boy dies because you were too slow, prominence burn, jet, blue flames erupted from his soles. He broke his own speed record. He shot forward like a comet, narrowing the gap. The rocky foothills Izuku versus the gnome. The fight was brutal and fast. Izuku was fighting like a feral animal. He couldn't afford finesse. He couldn't afford to analyze quirks. He just had to move. The gnome was strong. Terrifyingly strong. It had regeneration. Izuku had smashed its shoulder with a Manchester smash, only to watch the bone knit back together in seconds. It had wings. It had elongated limbs that could stretch like rubber. But Izuku had desperation. He bounced off the canyon walls, using Black Whip to slingshot himself at impossible angles. He was a green pinball, striking and retreating, don't stay still. Never stay still. Manchester smash. He slammed his heel into the gnome's ribs. The creature grunted, tumbling out of the air. Izuku didn't wait to see it land. He landed on a spire of rock and prepared to launch himself west again. Buzz. The danger sense didn't buzz. It stopped. The silence in his head was sudden and absolute. Izuku froze. Why did it stop? Did Shigaraki turn back? Did Endeavor catch him? He looked east. Standing on the ridge of the canyon, not 50 yards away, was a figure. He wasn't running. He wasn't flying. He was just standing there, hands in the pockets of his tattered pants, his white cape fluttering gently in the mountain breeze. Tamayara Shigaraki. He had arrived. And he had arrived silently. Izuku felt his heart stop. The fear was so primal, so overwhelming, that for a second, he couldn't breathe. It was the presence of death itself. You're fast, Shigaraki said. He sounded bored. For a little brother. Izuku turned fully to face him. He fell into a defensive stance, his fists raised, black whip flaring out like a spider's web behind him. Shigaraki, Izuku said. His voice was steady, though his knees were shaking. That's my name, the villain smiled. But you're Deku, right? The useless one. The one who always gets in the way. Shigaraki took a step forward. The rock beneath his foot turned to dust instantly. Give it to me, Shigaraki said, extending a hand. You don't need it. It's too heavy for you. The voices, they're loud, aren't they? I can make them stop. I won't let you have it, Izuku said. One for all isn't something you take. It's something you're given. And it was given to me to stop people like you. Sentimental garbage, Shigaraki sighed. He vanished. He didn't teleport. He just moved faster than the eye could track. Izuku reacted purely on instinct, and the screaming warning of danger sense returning full force. Duck! Izuku dropped to the ground. A hand passed through the space where his head had been a millisecond before. The air pressure from the swipe blew Izuku's mask completely off, sending it tumbling into the canyon. Shigaraki was behind him. Too slow. Shigaraki reached down to touch Izuku's back. 5 fingers. Float. It happened without thinking. The 7th user's quirk, Nana Shimura's gift, activated. Gravity released its hold on Izuku. He shot upward, not jumping, but falling into the sky. Shigaraki's fingers grazed the fabric of his costume, crumbling a patch of green cloth into dust, but missing the skin. Izuku soared 50 feet into the air, spinning to look down. Shigaraki looked up, mild surprise on his face. Oh? You can fly now? Teacher didn't tell me about that one. Midoriya! A roar from above. The Nomu, which had recovered from Izuku's kick, was diving again. It saw Izuku in the air, a vulnerable target. It screeched and opened its jaws, aiming to bite Izuku in half. Izuku was trapped in midair. He couldn't dodge. Float didn't give him propulsion, only levitation. But before the Nomu could reach him, a blur of red appeared. Boom! Bakugo Katsuki exploded into the scene. He didn't attack the Nomu. He didn't attack Shigaraki. He slammed into Izuku midair, grabbing his collar and blasting them both sideways with a massive explosion. The Nomu bit empty air. Bakugo and Izuku tumbled through the sky, crashing onto a high ledge on the opposite side of the canyon. Keikaken? Izuku gasped, looking at his childhood friend. Bakugo was covered in soot, his mask gone, his eyes burning with fury. Did you think you could play hero all by yourself, you damn nerd? Bakugo screamed, grabbing Izuku by the front of his costume. I told you. You're the bait. The bait doesn't fight the shark alone. I tried to lead him away, and you got cornered. Bakugo pointed down into the canyon. Look, down below. Shigaraki was looking up at them. He wasn't angry. He was laughing, and next to him, the Nomu landed. Shigaraki reached out and placed a hand on the Nomu's head. This is annoying, Shigaraki said. The Nomu didn't decay. Instead, red tendrils of energy shot from Shigaraki's fingers into the creature's brain. The Nomu convulsed, its muscles bulging, its size doubling. Master. The Nomu groaned, its voice changing. It wasn't the creature speaking anymore. It was Shigaraki commanding it directly. Kill the explodey one, Shigaraki ordered, pointing a finger at the ledge. Leave the green one for me. The Nomu roared, a sound that cracked the stones around them. Great, Bakugo spat, sparks flying from his palms. Now he has a pet. He's not just a villain anymore, Kaken, Izuku said, standing up. He felt the power of one for all cycling, the vestiges standing at attention in his mind. He's a calamity. Then we stop the calamity. Bakugo grinned, a savage, terrified expression. Endeavor is 2 minutes out. Can you survive 2 minutes? Izuka looked at his broken hand. He looked at Shigaraki, who was slowly floating up toward them, carried by radio waves and science. I don't have a choice, Izuka said. He clenched his fist. Let's go.